Welcome to this James the Bike Guy, where today we're going to be breathing new life into an old SR Suntour fork. These forks are on all sorts of basic mountain bikes and something that are often overlooked in keeping your bike in good riding condition. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to tear apart the fork, clean it up, re-lubricate, and then reassemble so that it can feel fresh again and you can have fun with it. To tackle the rebuild, you're only going to need a few tools. You need some adjustable pliers, adjustable wrench, a flat blade screwdriver, a ratchet mechanism with a 10mm, a SR Suntour tool for the top caps, some rags, bit of grease, I like this Bontrager stuff, some super clean foaming degreaser or the like, and then some green fizz, which is a great cleaner for at the end. If you need any of this stuff, I'll have it linked in the description. To begin disassembling the fork, we're going to want to go ahead and take the lowers off, and you'll notice there's two bolts at the bottom of your fork legs. In my case, these are 10mm, but it's pretty common for them to also be Allen keys. But I'm going to go ahead and start to unscrew the nut at the bottom of the fork, and we're not going to take this all the way off, but rather we're going to leave a few threads on and then take our 10mm socket and give it a little tap at the bottom, and once you've gone ahead and tapped the bottom, we can take the nuts off of the end. And once the nuts are off, this should allow the fork leg to pull straight off and go smoothly, because as it comes off, you'll see there's a few things left on the internals. Now with the fork legs off, you'll notice on this real basic fork, the left side, which doesn't have a preload adjust, is really just a rod to help keep the fork from coming apart. On the right hand side that does have a preload adjust, you'll see this has a spring in it, and I'm going to want to go ahead and take this off so that when we pull apart the top, we're going to be able to grease this up. So just take a wrench and lefty-loosey, you'll get this little flat head washer nut to come off of the bottom. So we take our travel limiter and then our rubber bump stop off of it as well. With the nut pulled off of the spring shaft, we can now take our SR Suntour tool and toss it right on the top. We're just going to go lefty-loosey, and this is going to pull the preload cap right off. And once it's off, the whole spring assembly should be able to pull right out of the fork. And then you'll see the spring is going to come out, and then we can take a little poker to help slide the shaft up. With the spring out, I'm going to go ahead and do the same on the other side of the fork. So nut comes off, take the top cover off just like so. And then go ahead, slide this guy up, and you'll see this is going to come out clear just with a rubber bump stop at the very top for when you bottom the fork out. From here, our first step to keep going is going to be cleaning up the stanchions of the fork. And how we're going to do that is I'm going to use some foaming degreaser, and I like the foaming degreaser because it's going to help pull up some of the imperfections off of the fork. And we're going to do that, let it sit just a little bit, then I'm going to grab the fork legs and do the same thing here. So let these get soaking just like so. Put this aside for a moment, and we'll use our rag to wipe down and clean off this fork leg. Do the same on the other side. Now our fork lowers are another place we're going to clean up, so we let that degreaser sit on for a while. So I'm just going to go ahead and clean these up for a little bit. And once the fork is wiped down, it's time to pull the seals out from the inside. So the seal itself will come out just by hand. You should be able to pull it off. Be careful, but it's going to come out just like that. And then inside the fork leg, you're going to see a plastic sleeve which acts as the bushing on this fork. You'd replace those if your fork was having flex, you know, it was wobbling back and forth. But in my case, I think just pulling the seals off, cleaning everything up is gonna be okay. So we'll take that, that same rag, gonna see how we can get this wrapped down in, clean out as much of the gunk that's inside of the fork we can. So you'll see those are now nice and clean on the inside. Take a little degreaser, spray it around on those seals. Just like that. You want to be careful with this. Unless you're replacing the seals, you don't want to damage them. But we'll clean this up. All right, you can see that come out looking real nice. Keep in mind, this rag was clean before we started working on this fork, so a whole bunch of junk has been pulled out and should make this come back together feeling much nicer. Next up, it's time to clean up the internals. So most of this stuff isn't too bad, but basically I'm just gonna take a rag and try to clean up as much of this as I can. It's in decent shape, actually. To begin the reassembly, it's time to put a liberal amount of grease on everything. So I've gone ahead and begun to grease up the little bolt that goes through for the drive side lower. We'll take its bump stop, slide that into place. It's gonna give nice lubrication for everything. And we'll go ahead and drop that right in, slides out, perfect. On the other side, we wanna do the same thing. So liberal amount of greasing here. Remember, you can always wipe off the excess if you need to. This is a grease and friction fork, so we want grease. And slide that into place as well. Then we can take our spring, which is gonna go in the drive side, and again, we wanna grease the heck out of this. Lots of grease all over this stuff, especially if you've wiped it all the way clean. So that internal will drop right back into place. And you see how that went in nice and smooth? That's pretty much exactly what we're looking for, because that's gonna help it be very smooth once it's inside. Now we can take our preload adjuster, this guy, and begin to screw that right back into the top. So hand tighten it in, and then we'll use our tool. And when you snug this up, it's just snug by hand. You don't need to go too tight. We're gonna grease up the bump stop as well as the limiter, and we'll just slide this right back into place. Just like that. Now our next step is those little nuts we had before. Those are gonna screw right onto the bottom. Again, hand tight here. So thread right back into place. Take our tool, snug that up nice and good. Same with the non-drive side as well. Reassembly of the seals is pretty simple. You just slide them back on and then press straight down. What you're looking for is to make sure that the ring all the way around is going to be nice and snug. Next up, it's time to lubricate inside of the seals of the new fork. So we'll go ahead, get some lube right on the seals. We want to do that before sliding the stanchions in, just to make sure that they don't nick up the seals or anything like that. And then we'll take some grease and put it on the lowers of the stanchion. Now, when we're done, we're gonna wipe off the excess. So again, don't worry about being pretty liberal. Get all of that stuff going on there. And once you've got that all set up, we should be able to slide the fork lower right back onto the uppers. So do this smooth, making sure that you slide in just like that. And as it slides up, you may need to wiggle it just a little bit so that the bolt heads show through. And now, just begin to tighten these back on. And then be sure to snug them up to torque spec. The last piece to this overhaul is simply just going to be cleaning off the excess grease, like you see here, using a little Pedro's Green Fizz to just wipe down the rest of the fork. Once you've cleaned it up, the last thing to do is just verify functionality. So go ahead and give it a couple of compressions, and yeah, we're good to go. So we're ready to be able to install this on the bike. Just like that, we've completed the rebuild of this fork. Wasn't too bad, didn't take too many tools, and maybe a half hour's worth of time. So go ahead and let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. If you have any questions, be sure to add them there as well. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button, as well as browse the channel for more videos like this in the future.